Hello everybody and welcome to another Findmypast from home. It is of course Friday and it is 4 o'clock, so we are back. We did miss a session the other week or so, do apologise, but back with a really good one today, one you do not want to miss, so definitely stay tuned for what is to come, although the title of the video these days does give a little bit away, so maybe you already know if you have been staying tuned to the social and the title here. My name is Liam. I work in the customer support team here at Findmypast, and as always, it is my pleasure to be here with you on another Friday. I am at the moment riding solo. There is no one in the comments here today, but we do have someone to bring in later on, so you will learn more about that later, as I say. But as always, do let us know where you're tuning in from. How is the weather? I think there's going to be a theme with the weather reports this week. I hope so anyway. I hope we are all enjoying the sun as much as we are here in Dundee anyway. So who have we got coming in? So we've got David over on YouTube from a sweltering but cloudy Somerset. So it is very sweltering, but not too cloudy in Dundee at the moment, actually. It was a bit yesterday, one of those really sort of muggy days, or close as they say in Dundee. Not a nice day to be outside in at all. We've got Andrea from a sunny Stoke-on-Trent. Andrew, hot and sunny in Lancashire, now hiding indoors with a cool drink. Absolutely, I went to get a drink about 5 minutes before I went live, put ice in it, and it's already melted, so it is one of those days. And sunny and warm for once, hooray, hope you're not melting. I hope the same is applying to yourself across the water as well. It is, as I always said before, mid-20s is about my limit temperature-wise, so pushing the limit here a little bit. It's saying it's 22 at the moment, but I'm in Glasgow tomorrow. It's meant to be about 24 there, so I will definitely be struggling there. It'll be a pint in the shade tomorrow, I think. We've got Kim from very sunny West Yorkshire. We've got a very warm Essex. Linda from Lossy, very nice, round about where I'm from originally, so very nice to see. Let's have a look. Andrew worried that Liam was off sick. Friday announcement only went live this morning. Do apologise. I am here. You know me, I'm always here, but was a little bit late with the announcement today, so I do apologise. My own fault. I will take that one and make sure I'm a bit earlier. I usually try and do it in the morning, but you know what it's like. You have meetings, things get away from you. Sometimes it's hard to get around to do that, but apologies, Andrew. But we're still here, as I say, especially having missed one recently. We are definitely back. Sue Moon saying that the sun is trying to break through where she is, so I was going to say hopefully it does break through, but as much as I've been struggling today and over the past few days, maybe you're quite happy that it's not breaking through today. Maybe you're quite happy for a bit of a break from the sun. And yeah, we've got a lot of high degrees, 27 degrees, mid-20s, and 17 degrees in Roscoe, Illinois, but it'll be early there as well. I'm sure the sun is coming your way. That's about how hot it is in the mornings over here. So as I say, I'm sure the sun is coming your way, and I'm sure Jen is watching and laughing at us all for complaining about it being in the mid-20s, because I know, as she always says, much hotter over there. And last time I was on, we had someone, was it Texas someone was on, and it was in the 40 degrees or so. So yeah, not as hot as it could be, but as I say, about my limit. Definitely struggling. So we do of course have a question of the week this week, and it is kind of themed around what we're going to be talking about later on. That is, if you could interview any celebrity about their family history, who would it be and why? So any celebrity, any well-known person, whether it's someone you're just a big fan of, someone maybe you've seen them on, Who Do You Think You Are, or something similar, and wanted to know a little bit more about different areas. Maybe you might even be related to someone and you want to crack that case finally. So any celebrity, anyone you'd like to talk to about their family history, let us know in the comments and we will have a look at that later on. But we will do the new records first of all, and then we'll get going. So new records. So we've got 3 new additions, or 3 updates, I should say, this week to the Dorset Parish records. So nice and easy. Got to reuse my slides from the last one, the Herefordshire Parish records. So quick prep for me today. So we have got over 38,000 new baptisms from 1568 to 1930, over 52,000 new marriages from 1470 to 1974, and over 29,000 new burials from 1559 to 1993. And I say this every time that we get records as far back as this, but it just always blows my mind when we get back as far as 1470. Really crazy to think about, really interesting seeing records from as long ago as that. And as I always say, nice to have those more recent ones online as well. Burials up to 1993, marriages from 1974. So I went and had a look and did my usual Wikipedia search for famous people born in Dorset, famous people buried in Dorset. Went down quite a few rabbit holes, was having a look and seeing any names that jumped out at me. Turns out I don't know that many people from Dorset. I don't know if maybe it's just me or maybe just the people that come from Dorset haven't made their way into my circle at all. But as I say, not a few names jumping out at me, although one did for the name alone rather than it being someone that I recognised, and that was Mr. William Augustus Fitzgerald Lane Fox Pitt. And with the name as long as that, he is obviously going to jump out of a Wikipedia article at you and you are going to notice him. So had a little look at William Augustus Fitzgerald Lane Fox Pitt. You'd think with a name like that he's going to be quite an easy man to find in the records. That is, of course, his full name recorded on the burial. But the thing about someone with as many names as that is you don't always know just how they are actually going to be recorded. For example, when I did a search on the website, you can see here just some of the variations that his name was recorded. You've got full name, you've got the William shortened, you've got some of the middle name shortened, all the middle names shortened. There was some as well where it was just WAFL Fox Pitt. You've got Fox Pitt with and without the hyphen. So as I say, can be a tricky man to find even with a name as sort of uncommon and unusual as that. And because he did come from quite a well-known family and still to this day, one of his grandsons is actually, I found out, a horse jockey. So a lot of records come up for him when you're having a look in the newspapers for him. Quite a lot of horse riding articles, which confused me at first, but back to the Wikipedia rabbit hole, find out that his grandson was a jockey. But William Augustus Fitzgerald Lane Fox Pitt does appear in the newspapers. He is in the Edinburgh Gazette in the King's Honours List, as it was then, with a nice little description as to why he's getting the honour for conspicuous gallantry during operations. So he actually was quite a decorated soldier of his time. He fought in both World War I and World War II and was one of the founding members of the Welsh Guards. So a very interesting and storied background for, as I say, one of the longest names I have come across, and a very good name to come across too. Although, as I mentioned, you're never sure just how it's going to be recorded. If you've got as many middle names as that, or indeed a double-barreled surname, always very good for the family tree, makes them nice and easy to find sometimes. So those are the new records. We do, of course, have new newspapers online as well. We've got two brand new titles this week. We've got the Liverpool Saturday's Advertiser, nice collection of years from sort of early 19th century, and then the Epsom Journal as well. So again, nice collection, kind of late 19th century, early 20th century. And then a nice long list of updated titles. It looked a lot longer when I first started copy pasting this over, but that is just because of the sheer collection of years. You can see things like the Witness Weekly News at the bottom there, really big collection of years being added there. Rochdale Observer, the same, really nice broad collection of that as well. So very good to see some long list of updated titles on the website as well. So those are the new records, and as I did last time when I was flying solo, I forgot to put the link to the blog in the comments, so I will do that now before I forget. But you know all about them now. You don't need to read the blog in any hurry. You can do that afterwards. And it wasn't me that wrote it this week. It was Back to Daisy, so you can have a little read and see what else there is to find about those records. So those are the new records. I can see quite a lot of question of the week answers coming in already, and Matthew asking if he's missed the question of the week. So I'll pop that back on screen for Matthew and any other late joiners. Question was, if you could interview any celebrity about their family history, who would it be and why? As I said, if it's someone maybe potential relation to, someone you've seen their snippets of their family history before, you want more information, or you think maybe they just have an interesting background that you'd like to know more about. So we will have a look at some answers that have come in already, and then we can go on to the most exciting bit of today's session. So, Annie, first off the mark, saying that Hugh Laurie, he's a relation of mine. I'd like to know what he knows about his Scottish roots. Very nice. I'm not sure if you mentioned that before, but that is a good relation to have as well, Hugh Laurie. And yeah, it'd be definitely interesting. I'm sure you could tell him a thing or two about his Scottish roots as well, which I'm sure he'd appreciate. So that would be a really cool one. Beth and Chinch would like to interview someone like Michael Sheen or Anthony Hopkins, as they're both from the same area as a lot of my family. So I'd love to see if our families cross paths and knew each other. Yeah, exactly. That's the kind of thing I had in mind, where it's someone from the area where you were born or your family come from. As you say, is there a relationship there? Did they know each other? Is there a concrete relation? Are you all in the same family tree? That would be really interesting to find out as well. Let's see, we've got Gordon coming in saying Diane Decker, as my mother said they were related, but can find no link. She was an American singer who came over to England during World War II. I think she was just lodging with the family. I appreciate the clarification on Diane Decker, not a name I'd come across before, so but that would be definitely an interesting one. When you think there's a link there, there's that age-old family story that there's some relation there, but you're never entirely sure. So that would be a good one to sit down with and confirm for sure. And Suman going a little bit closer to home, saying she would choose her great-grandmother from Ireland, so I could find out where she was from and what my grandmother got up to. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be a celebrity necessarily, someone who maybe you just have unanswered questions for, and you could fill out that family tree by sitting down and recording a podcast, for example, with your great-grandmother about old family tales as well. That would be really cool. Let's see. Some really good answers coming in here. Karen saying she would like to chat with Olivia Coleman about her Indian heritage, as it is now one of my specialty areas. Yeah, another really good one. Much like I said about Anya with Hugh Laurie, it'd be nice for you to get the opportunity to kind of share your expertise. And I'm sure, as I say, teach her a thing or two about her family history as well, and swap tales and things. So that would be a really cool one as well. Loads of good answers here. As I say, we've got the actor Robert Pattinson or the 60s models Jean Shrimpton, related on my paternal and maternal side respectively. So very nice. Nice famous family tree you've got there, Kim. Very good. Let's see. Lynn saying she would like to find out more about Colin Firth, as her Firth family tree is from Leeds, and Richard Rankin is he's from the Glasgow area, as is my paternal grandmother. So we'd like to know if his Rankin and my Rankin families connect. Yeah, absolutely. That would be another good one, as I say, trying to find those links when you've got same surnames and different things connected in the background. Be nice to see if there is a concrete relationship there. Let's see. See, we've got Julie saying David Jason, national treasure. No further clarification needed. Just an interesting guy to sit down with, I'm sure. And Ellen's a new name for me here as well. Italian artist Giuseppe Mentesi. Hope the pronunciation was okay there. Have been trying to find a link between him and my own Mentesi family with no success. A really good one as well. As I say, those ones would be the most interesting, where you're sitting down recounting your both respective families and trying to work out if there's a link there, swapping stories and everything. That would be quite a nice setup, I think, would be something like that. We've got another national treasure here. Dame Judy Dench, as her Who Do You Think You Are episode was fascinating. Yeah, a really good one as well. We'll do a couple more and then we will move on, as they to the most exciting bit of today. Two more here. We've got Gene saying Gene Simmons. I was thinking the other Gene Simmons from the rock band Kiss, so I appreciate the spelling of Gene there. The actress Hollywood star of the 50s. Family did say she was related, and my maiden name was Fitzsimmons. I believe Fitz means son of. I doubt it, though. You never know, do you, Gene? You never know if there is a connection there, so keep going. Definitely, you'll hopefully find that one day. Kit Harington is one of my very distant cousins. He missed my ancestor out of his drama Gunpowder. That'd be a good one as well, especially when you know you are already related as well, just seeing how close the ancestors go. And I said two more, but they just keep coming in, so we'll do two more from now. So as far as celebrities go, I would love to go back and interview Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin, two comic geniuses. Yeah, I'm sure Charlie Chaplin's got a really interesting background as well, so that would be a really interesting listen as well. And the last one for now is actor Daniel Brockbank from Corrie. My maternal family are Brockbanks from Cumberland. Nice. Brockbank, not a surname I've come across before as well. So every chance there is a relationship there as well, I would say, Patricia. So if you haven't already found it, definitely get stuck into that. Good stuff. So that was the question of the week. It was celebrities who you would like to discuss their family history with. We are going to move on to the next segment, but if you do have time, keep your answers coming and we can always pop back to them at the end of the session, time permitting. Notice how today, Anya, I'm not saying that it's going to be a short one because I'm fully aware we've got a lot to get into. So I will not be restricting myself with time and saying it's going to be a short one. So, as I say, I was riding solo, no one in the comments today, but I do have a very special guest to bring into the stream. So I would like to introduce everyone to my colleague, Maddie.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, Maddie. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm very jealous of all these amazing celebrity connections. I don't have any on my tree, so
I know, I was just about to ask if you had an answer, but I'm the same. I'd answer all these questions about any famous people in the family story, and everyone in the community has such amazing answers and really cool links. And I'm like, mine are all just agricultural labourers from the north of
yeah,
Scotland and the north of Ireland. Like, I don't have anyone interested in that I found yet. So always makes me jealous as to what could be out there when you see other people's family trees. But
yeah.
anyone specific, any celebrity you would fancy a chat with at all?
Ooh, do you know what? I really enjoyed some of the more recent Who Do You Think You Are? Like Bear Grylls was a really good one. I
Oh
enjoyed
yeah.
that, and Leslie Mandeville, that was a really good episode. So maybe some of the ones that I know a bit from Who Do You Think You Are, to
Mm-hmm.
kind of talk about how it's impacted them and how they feel about it and what they do next with that research.
Mm-hmm.
Do they kind of tell people about it and incorporate it into their own kind of day-to-day life in any way? That's sort of
Yeah,
how I would approach it. Yeah.
that'd be good. Yeah, like a sort of who do you think you are follow up, like a
Yeah.
where are they now sort of thing. 6 months later, what do you do differently now that you know all this about your family?
Yeah, there you go. Idea for a new series for them.
Yeah, don't leave us yet, Maddie. Don't leave us yet. You've only just got started here. So everyone being very welcoming in the comments there. So tell them a little bit about yourself. What do you do at Find My Past?
Sure. Yeah. So at Findmypast, I am the senior PR manager. So I run the PR side of things, and that involves kind of digging for interesting stories in our records, which is dreamy. I get to look for really amazing little nuggets of stories and information all day long, and pitching those stories out to across the media. And one of the things that I've been working on recently has been this brand new podcast, which we've launched last week, which is called Step Into the Past. And it's a really, really exciting and really, really, though I say it myself, interesting set of episodes. So the first one, as I say, was out last week, and then they are coming weekly after that.
Nice. So yeah, as you say, you are of course here to talk about this brand new exciting podcast, which everyone has been enjoying greatly. So, tell us a little bit about the podcast. How did it come about? What's it going to be about, and different things?
Sure. So essentially the concept of the podcast is that we are kind of taking our listeners back in time and following in the footsteps of people in the past. We've got this really, really exciting partnership with the National Trust at the moment. So each episode of the series, of this first series anyway, centers on a different National Trust location, and then really like the nub of it is kind of understanding and discovering what the impact of those kind of lives and those stories from the past, what's their impact today. So we take a descendant through their family story in connection with those amazing places, and we kind of explore the experiences their ancestors might have had, how they might have lived their lives, and kind of and what they know about them already, and then reveal some things that they also might not have known. So the format is a really lovely, quite informal walk and talk style podcast. And we're also really, really excited because we have very well-known historian, Professor Susanna Lipscomb, talking of celebrities, who has come on board to host the podcast for us. So yeah, that's the format. And I actually have a little trailer for you to share. So let me just see if I can add that and just show you a little bit about what it's all about.
Step into the Past, the podcast where we take you back in time. We'll be uncovering the family tree of a different guest each week, visiting a central location in the lives of their ancestors. What secrets can these locations reveal about the lives of people who lived or worked there?
So yeah, I hope Susanna isn't listening, because she'll be very offended that you didn't pick her as the celebrity guest on your brand new podcast venture that you're launching off the back of this and top of this one here. But yeah, so about Susanna Lipscomb. So tell us a little bit, for those who might not know Susanna, tell us a little bit about her, why she was the one chosen to present.
Yeah, so Susanna is a really, amazing award-winning historian. She's also an author and a broadcaster. So in her academic career, she's the Professor Emerita at the University of Roehampton. She also has various other kind of academic accolades under her belt. She was formerly the research curator at Hampton Court Palace. And as an author, she's written, several books on kind of various periods of history. And most recently, that she wrote What is History Now, which is a very popular historical kind of non-fiction book out at the moment. And then she also, you might have seen her in lots of different kind of historical documentaries and TV programs on the BBC or ITV or Channel 5. And she also has her own podcast, which is called Not Just the Tudors, as well. So she's a well-known figure, and she's also really, really interested in family history. And just chatting to her, she kind of says in the podcast, she loves figuring out kind of the mysteries that sit behind family history and how to kind of pull apart those mysteries and kind of, figure out how it all fits together. And so, she's a perfect fit, really. We're really, really excited that she's on board.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the cool thing as well, like you say, is that sort of blend of history and family history kind of coming together and seeing both sides of it. And like say, someone like Susanna is the sort of perfect choice for that as well, with her background and her knowledge too. So you said that this is as part of our collaboration with the National Trust, another very exciting announcement made recently. So which locations are going to be featured in the podcast off the back of that?
Yeah, so the first series, we have just 3 episodes. So the first one is actually Susanna's own story, and then the second one, which was out on Monday, that one focuses on Quarry Bank, which is a really incredible site. I don't know if anybody here has been there. It's a huge industrial revolution mill, cotton mill, up in just outside Manchester, in a small kind of really beautiful, kind of very lush valley, in a village called Styal, in just outside Manchester. And then episode 3 focuses on Wordsworth House. So that is it's the birthplace of poet William Wordsworth, and it's in a small kind of Cumbrian town called Cockermouth.
Lovely. Yeah, not been to Quarry Bank myself, but I will be just about this time next week. Funnily enough, next Saturday, Sunday, I will be there. So very excited to put the place to the story, I guess. That was sounding better in my head, but you know what I mean. Now that I've listened to the podcast, being able to see it myself will be really
Definitely.
cool. So
And
yeah,
actually,
it'd be really cool.
you'll be able to walk the route, because each episode has a walking route, a corresponding walking route. So we've put together really nice kind of circular routes for Quarry Bank and Wordsworth House, which we go through in the podcast, so you can walk with us, and we'll have downloadable guides. So if you want to visit those locations and do the walks yourselves and listen to the podcast, then you can download those and use them on your visit.
So that sounds like I've got permission to take half an hour away and do that walk next Saturday, Sunday. So thank you very much indeed. So I always joke that these are my favorite group of customers. I like giving them little teasers for things that maybe nobody else knows about just yet. So is there any sort of sneak previews, any teasers that you can give this lovely lot for what is to come on the podcast?
Absolutely, yeah. Why not? Why not? I mean, I can give you a little kind of highlight maybe from each episode. So, if I take the first one, Susanna's family, I don't know if anybody's already listened to it. If you have, I'd love to know what you think. So we go through kind of Susanna's story, and really, for me, the fascinating thing was that her mother was adopted. And with adoption stories, you know, particularly in the kind of 1950s and previously, adoptions were done in a much more of a kind of a less formal way. And so it's often quite tricky to track those people in the records. And actually, you know, discovering the stories of her, both of her adopted and her biological family, was really special because she didn't know anything about really either of them. And so, you know, it was really, really emotional for her. So it was a, you know, a wonderful moment to kind of show her mother's, her grandmother's birth certificate, and, you know, and go through that with her, and what might have happened, and kind of getting clues along the way of, you know, why might she have been put up for adoption, because nobody in the family actually knows. So that was a really amazing part of that first episode. I think for the second episode, you know, that was, I suppose, the highlight there. So it features David Higginson, who's our guest and our descendant, and he's also a National Trust volunteer. So he knows a huge amount about the site, and he's very, very kind of connected to it anyway, and really engaged with it. And we discovered that his family have kind of lived in an almost unbroken line in the area, and in being involved in the kind of cotton industry or weaving industry in that area for over 400 years, which is so rare nowadays, isn't it? People, you know, families kind of move away, or, you know, whatever it is, you expect to see that continuous kind of geographical location in the past, but actually right up to the present day is quite unheard of. So so it was really, really special, that story. And I think with that story, David's family, you know, it's a story that's not often told, because often at, you know, National Trust properties, they focus maybe on the owners, or, you know, the kind of lords of the manor. And actually we were taking this family, one of, you know, thousands that lived and worked at this industrial mill, and we were just kind of tracing their story and their experiences at that place. So it was a really different perspective, and yeah, it was, I think, for David, it was really special as well, just to kind of, because he hadn't really traced that side of his family, despite being an avid family historian. So that was amazing to kind of find a story he didn't know about as well, and take him through that. And I think my favorite part of that was the story of Enoch, who was one of David's ancestors, who was working at the mill during the height of the Industrial Revolution. He was, you know, started at the mill as a very young child, you know, under 10, like unheard of today, in really kind of dangerous, dusty, you know, humid conditions. And he started working at a very young age, as a scavenger, on one of the looms, which is the little children that would kind of dart in and out, as the looms went back and forth, and kind of retrieve that discarded cotton from the floor. So really, really, you know, people lost hands and all sorts of things doing that. So really, really dangerous job for this little chap. And then we find him, you know, in the 1851 census a few years later, and he's 14, and he's worked his way up to become a cotton mule. And it's a fascinating to kind of track these whole lives of, you know, this one little boy that was working from the age of, you know, maybe 8 or 9, all the way up his whole working life, you know, 50, 60, 70 years. So really fascinating case study there, from that podcast episode. And then lastly, episode 3, so we have Wordsworth House. And for this one, we followed the story of Wordsworth himself, his 4 times, let me just check, 4 times, great granddaughter Charlotte. And this was again, an extraordinary story, because we actually had a bit of a surprise when we looked in the 1921 census for Wordsworth House, and I'm not going to give anything away, but there's a bit of a shock there for us. And so we looked at kind of Charlotte's sprawling family tree and how the Wordsworths have kind of been really, intrinsically connected to Wordsworth House and the town of Cockermouth for, over 250 years. And actually there was an amazing kind of, moment in that history where the family became very divided, and one branch went off to, fame and birth William Wordsworth, one of our most loved poets and academics and celebrated clergymen. And then the other went off and had a not so illustrious kind of story. Ended up as kind of carters and draymen at the local brewery in the town. And so it's a really, again, a fascinating story of a very divided family tree for that one as well. So yeah, that's a bit of a snapshot of each episode. If anybody has any questions, just feel free to shout them out.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, like you say, 3 very different episodes and different stories kind of being told across, especially between Quarrybank and Wordsworth House and the kind of families they're in. So I know it's going to be hard because I know you've worked quite closely along from start to finish of this, but do you have a favorite property, a favorite story, or?
Oh gosh, I think they're all, they're all so different and unique, and I love doing all of them. I think all of those stories are really, really interesting. But for me, I think it has to be Wordsworth House. Just I think there were, in that story, when you listen, it's out next week on Monday. It's much more. There's this opportunity there to kind of put women into the story, which is often really, really tricky because, women, ethnic minorities, all of those sorts of things are quite tricky to kind of trace in any really meaningful way in the records, because they're just kind of, just cut out a little bit. So it was a really nice kind of story that, brought in some of those stories of Charlotte's female ancestors. And so that was, a really nice thing to do. And the story itself is a really, really powerful one, and they don't come along very often. And it was a really, really hard work to kind of, make that story work and follow it along and make sure that kind of we had a descendant there. So really, really hard work, that one. But I think, when it is hard work, the reward is always feels sweeter. So I think that one is definitely my favorite. Yeah.
I know, definitely. Like you say, even when you're just like you're doing your own family tree, you do kind of end up becoming more attached to the ancestor who you've had to kind of put that work in for and use different sources and follow them around the world and different things. Like you say, you appreciate it more when you've kind of had to do that legwork to find out more about them. So I can
Totally, exactly. Like, there you are,
sympathize.
I've got you.
Yeah, and then you'll always remember where they were, and you'll always remember their name. So whenever anyone asks your favorite ancestor, it's always that one. So definitely. So I think something that you think about quite a lot when you're listening to people talking about family history, things like who do you think you are and different things, is like how much do these people know about their own family history? Like how much, so Susanna and David, who you mentioned, is already interested in family history. So how much do they kind of know going into this?
Yeah, I mean, it really, really varied. So, we were just saying, like, you might have a kind of favorite side to kind of to research for varying reasons, and that was definitely the case with these guests. Some of them knew a lot about one side and not the other. So for Susanna, for example, she'd done a lot of research actually already into the Lipscomb side, so her paternal line, and really, really had a connection there. And then obviously for the fact that she'd struggled to kind of get any headway with her adoptive and her biological maternal side. There was just nothing. She didn't know anything outside of what her kind of mother might have passed down in dribs and drabs. And then David's he's an avid family historian himself. So as I say, he knew a huge amount of information already about his family, but he actually hadn't done the Pearsons, which is the line that we were tracing for him, and the line that with the stories that we go into in the podcast. So yeah, that one was, again, we're trying to find something that he might not have known about, that might have come as a surprise for him. And then Charlotte, she knew, the Wordsworths are so heavily kind of known about and researched, that Charlotte knew, again, quite a lot about, obviously, the Wordsworths, but we managed to kind of to provide this extra kind of, new lens, I suppose, with this new kind of story of this divided tree, and go down a line that she had no idea about, really. And actually, fascinatingly, there are, hundreds of Wordsworths in the area. So if you have a Wordsworth somewhere, you're probably related to the poet in some way.
Definitely, yeah, and yeah, like you say, I think that's something that this lot in particular, we are amongst friends here, fellow family historians, so they will be kind of particularly interested in, like you say, about finding that new angle and kind of telling different stories that people might not actually have known themselves yet when you are dealing with their own sort of family history. So how did that kind of come about? How did you go about the research for this? What record sets were you using?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I guess it was really lucky, because with the National Trust partnership that we've got, we're, as part of that partnership, we're using the 1921 census as a springboard for telling these kind of new stories and doing a lot of new research about 10 places across the UK, these ones included. So and that's really rare to have that opportunity to kind of find completely new narratives in the records for places that are really well known and much loved. So huge shout out to Jen Baldwin, who I know hosts and comes on here a lot, who is an unbelievable researcher, and pure, kudos to her, because she did all of the research for all of those 10 properties, and came up with some absolutely amazing amazing stories, and she did hours and hours of research for those properties. So I have to hand it to her. She is the absolute kind of bedrock behind this. But that was kind of the basis, is all of this research we already had, and so then it was about thinking, what do we do with it all? What direction do we go in? Where are the stories that we want to kind of concentrate on? And so with the podcast, we knew we wanted to kind of connect really strongly to the now, because I think for everybody, it's about, what's the connection to me, and what's the emotional kind of and really powerful pull of family history. And really, it's kind of you finding out what those really emotional stories and those really interesting kind of tidbits and details about your ancestors. So we really we're keen to get kind of descendants as kind of the key thing here. So we started kind of building family trees for all of the properties, and the kind of people we found in 1921 through Jen's research, and we used our tree search tool. I don't know if anybody has used this and kind of found people that are kind of connected to their family trees and messaged them, but that was absolutely key for us, was searching for people that were active and connected into those family trees, and reaching out to them, just sending messages and saying, hi, we're trying to put this podcast together and tell these stories, would you like to be involved? And then we kind of prioritized those ones where we thought, actually, that's a goer, that might not be a goer. And then once we had those descendants, we were then obviously very, very guided by, their own family trees. So what are those stories of their kind of maybe not so distant ancestors, from, again, extra stories we could tell from the census, and kind of building that picture of their lives and their family stories. So all the usual suspects, really: birth, marriage and death, military records, migration and travel, censuses. And then I would say that the kind of star was really our newspaper collection, because, you can kind of build up really the kind of, what happened when, and who was doing what and why, and all of those sorts of things. But the newspaper collection really gave us that kind of richness and detail and just kind of color to those stories that we obviously couldn't get from traditional records. So but yeah, all of those records that we used we have a special kind of website for the podcast on our website. So yeah, all of those records are listed. So if you want to kind of delve into exactly which collections we used for each one, you can do that as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So I know you talked a lot about the different record sets and different avenues, and of course a massive shout out to fan favourite Jen Baldwin for all her hard work as well. I think for seemed like months on end, every time I spoke to Jen and asked what she was up to, it was just 2 words back: national trust. So I know the effort that she put into this, and everyone around the business as well, of course, other people. But as I say, talking about the record sets and things, as I said, we are amongst friends, we are amongst family historians. Not sure if love or hate is the best word to use here, but there's nothing they know better than a brick wall. So they must have encountered some along the way. Are there any particular ones that kind of stick out or particularly difficult to break down?
Yeah, and we actually had a really good case of this. And Jen just completely, absolutely nailed it. I remember we were kind of banging our heads against a brick wall a bit for a while for around Susanna's kind of adoption and biological family stories. And it was in particular the kind of the adoptive side that we just could not find who the couple was, anything about the couple that adopted her mother, or anything past them, because they were obviously kind of the key to solving and building that tree. So what happened was, we had 2 names. We had Charles Fairmena and we had Betty Kettle, and that was the name of the couple that adopted Susanna's mother. And very sweetly, she called Betty Nanny Kettle, or Nanny K was what she called her, which I thought was so sweet. And we found the couple, Charles and Betty, then Fairmena, in electoral records in the early 2000s. We then found a marriage certificate between Charles Fairmena and a Betty Lockhead. So in 1947. So right time, kind of wrong name for Betty. So we were thinking that doesn't quite work out. How can we verify this? So we looked at the 1945 electoral registers for Deptford, which was where they were married, and we found a Betty Lockhead living with a Joan Amy Kettle and a Bessie Kettle. So we knew that there was a connection between Betty Lockhead and the Kettles, but we didn't know what that was. And we were really, really struggling until we found in our newspaper collection, I'm hoping people can see this, this absolutely golden newspaper clipping, which explains it all, and it's really great. So it's a marriage notice for a Miss Betty Florence Joan Parker, who is the daughter of a Mr. Parker and Mrs. Kettle, who married a private Leslie Leonard Lockhead, and at St. John's Church. So that gives us so much information about kind of the various kind of names that are involved here, and how they might interrelate. So obviously Betty Florence Joan Parker is the same Betty Lockhead, is the same Betty Fairmena, is the same Betty Kettle. But again, this newspaper collection also gives us a bit of information about how she became Betty Kettle, which was actually, so her mother, who's in this listed as Mrs. Kettle, she remarried after Mr. Parker, her father, had died. So she remarried to a Cyril Kettle. So we know that Kettle was the name of her stepfather. So it's it's 4 names for one person, which is always really, really, so tricky. But this newspaper article absolutely gave us all the information we needed, and it also gave us some lovely details about Betty and her first marriage. This is not Leslie Leonard Lockhead was not actually Susanna's relation. This was a first marriage, which then actually failed, and she went on to marry somebody else. But they married because Leslie was on 48 hours army leave from the war, during the war. So it's really, really beautiful tale of, this kind of almost runaway marriage that happened, very romantic. And I think it also details that, her sisters and her cousin were the bridesmaids and what she wore and things like that. So this was absolutely a crucial moment to kind of break down that brick wall in Susanna's research.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I say, I'm just sitting reading that newspaper article again when you showed it there, and even just little things like the last sentence, there was no honeymoon, just little things like that, like that extra little detail that you get. And like I say, that's why newspapers and why Jen Baldwin are so wonderful as well, for helping through things like that. So I did put you on the spot a bit earlier and asked if you had a favorite story from the podcast. So I think this question is probably a little bit easier. Is there a favorite resource that you've used to kind of get through these stories?
I mean, I think this
Yeah.
it was definitely the newspapers were great, unlocking mysteries like this. And also, as I say, it's where we got a lot of that kind of color and richness from. So another example of that, that really added to the podcast and kind of gave those just added kind of that real kind of meaning for our guests. So in the forthcoming Wordsworth House episode, for example, it was newspapers that gave us this really, really emotional moment with Charlotte, because her grandparents tragically were both involved in car accidents, separate ones, and she obviously knew about the accidents they were involved in, but didn't really know any detail about them, just knew kind of the consequences of them. And so those reports, we found these newspaper reports very, very kind of long and detailed, that gave this account of actually what happened to both of her grandparents, and, the aftermath of it. And I think it's really impactful for anyone, but for Charlotte in this instance, to see that kind of, right there in black and white, that description of those incidents that had such a huge impact on her family, and really understand kind of what happened, and that kind of, that really emotional side of it. It was very special.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you say, that's the kind of the thing about newspapers, isn't it? That even if you had presented 2 death certificates and the cause of death was car accident, that would be sort of emotional and tragic enough to hear. But like you say, just being able to present these newspaper reports that goes into the detail of it and things like that, like you say, the kind of even more emotional side of things that kind of brings up as well, is always, like I say, not always pleasant, can be quite difficult, but very important, and yeah, very moving as well when you get that extra detail that you get from the newspapers that isn't available anywhere else, really, is it? So
yeah, absolutely. And I, if you haven't, I'm sure everybody here is very seasoned and will have gone and always checked the newspaper. But if you haven't already, I really recommend, in every search you do, going and delving in and having a look. And also this, for the social history as well that they offer, as part of this, we were looking for interesting things that might have happened at Quarrybank Mill, for example. So, the places where your ancestors might have lived and worked and things like that. It can also offer really, really lovely little stories that show kind of events they might have experienced, or, or whatever it is.
yeah, definitely. I think, like you say as well, that sometimes the kind of historical context around it as well, like I'm really bad for that when I have a name on my family tree and a year of birth and a year of death, but sometimes I don't always kind of consider what's happened in that 60, 70 year span, like the things they saw, the wars they lived through, the monarchs they lived through, like you say, that sort of social history, local history can just provides so much context and color.
It's so fascinating, honestly. And, you know, with things like I was researching, for example, you know, how did adoptions happen in, you know, in the 1950s? I have no idea. Is it the same channels as now? I don't know. And, you know, adding those sorts of interesting things, like what is the, you know, you can find the kind of legislation trail in the newspapers and things like that. So yeah, really interesting.
Definitely. So there are 2 episodes released already. A third one is out on Monday.
On Monday, yeah. So
So
keep your eyes peeled.
So what else can we expect? Are there more planned after Monday? What's the plan?
I mean, we're hoping so. So we really hope that, you know, people listen and enjoy and give us some nice feedback about these. And, you know, the long-term plan would be, you know, definitely to try and do a few more. But, you know, watch this space, and we haven't kind of got anything confirmed as yet. So but definitely if you have a listen, and make sure to kind of follow the podcast on whatever platform you use to listen to podcasts, and then you'll be notified as and when any kind of new episodes are released as well. So so you can kind of stay on top of that as well.
Absolutely. And I know a few people have been swapping notes in the comments already, but how do people listen to the podcast? Where can people find this?
Sure. So so if you listen to podcasts already, you might have a favorite platform. So ones like Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts are the favorites, really, are the usual ones. Other ones like Podbean and things like that, Buzzsprout, things like that are also available. But I would say probably, you know, stick to whatever you've used in the past, or if you're a newbie, try one of those top 3, so Spotify, Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, and just search for Step Into the Past. You can also get to it. We have a page on the website, as I've said, and that is the address on the screen now, which hopefully Liam can go through to. So it will take you through to this page, and if you scroll down, there's a bit of information about Susanna, and there we go. There is that little dark blue box there is a player. So if you just press play on that, it will start playing for you immediately. You don't have to have, you know, signed up for Spotify or any of the podcast providers, so you can listen through that. And also on the website we have, as I say, kind of little pictures and some details of the records that we've used and specific kind of places, newspaper articles, etc. And if you scroll down, there we go, we also have links to all of those record sets that were used. So that's episode 1, and then if you scroll down again, Liam, we've got the same for episode 2. So that box again, you can listen. All of those records again. And if you keep scrolling down, for episodes 2 and 3, we also have a bit of a map with a route for if you want to do the walk yourself. And we'll also have some downloadable guides that you can print off if you want to also go and do the walk and take that with you. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And then we have a little teaser for episode 3 as well, so you can all get stuck into that and see what might be coming on Monday as well. So we'll take that off the screen again, get ourselves back on. So we did have some nice comments coming throughout the session as well, so we'll pop a few on here as well. Victoria saying that the podcast sounds very interesting, so lovely to hear. I'm sure she'll be getting stuck in over the course of the weekend as well. Andrew, nice glowing review here. If you like Who Do You Think You Are, you'll like this too. So that is very good. That is if it was a book, that's what I'd be sticking on the front cover. I think that is a good one here. Pickle's very excited too. Can't wait to listen to them all. Few people already getting stuck in amongst it as well. Georgia has already listened to Susanna's episode with Ellie as well. Of course, our very own Ellie makes an appearance on that as well, who you all know. Really interesting, so really good. And Kim as well, a really good kind of context behind what we were discussing about the podcast as well, that she loves finding out about places as much as people. So really good as well, that kind of mix of it too, like you say, just getting the people that live there, but the place around it as well. So really, really good. And yeah, just as I say, a few comments about where to find it. So now you know. I'll pop this link in the chat for you all as well. So you've got that to come back to, and you can have a read and have a listen there. And yeah, like Maddie says, it will be on all of your favorite platforms already, episode 1 and 2. And then Monday, you will be getting episode 3 as well. And like he says, definitely have a listen, share it on social media. You've got the hashtag there. I'll pop that back on screen for you as well. So if you are sharing it on social media, be sure tag us, of course. Make sure you use the hashtag #StepIntoThePast as well. Let us know what you're all thinking about it, and hopefully we can force Maddie into getting us season 2 or episode 4 or season 2, depending on how things go. We'll get one there if she doesn't leave us and start her own Who Do You Think You Are follow-up podcast. Of course, that is so.
Absolutely not yet. No.
Now, see, now you've been on
time.
Fridays Live. You can't go anywhere now that you've been on Fridays Live. So
yeah,
that's the rules.
Been great. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
That is no problem at all.
Yeah, hopefully you all enjoy the podcast. I'm really excited for you all to have a listen.
So yeah, as I say, be sure to let us know once you've tuned in. We'll be back in the comments next week, so let us know. Tag us on social media. Use the hashtag as well. But that is 4 minutes to 5, so I will let you all go and get stuck into the podcast now. Time to get dinner on, time to get podcasts on in the background. Nothing better to do on a Friday evening, especially with the heat like this. So definitely stay cool and enjoy your weekends, whatever you are up to. As I say, I'm not back on for a while now, a couple of weeks, but I will speak to you all in the comments soon, I am sure. So have a lovely weekend all. Thank you very much again, Maddie, for joining us. Thank you all for being so welcoming as well as usual. And yeah, Sue Moon will finish on this comment. Woman after my own heart. G and T time, something I think we can all get behind. So thank you all very much again for joining us, and have a lovely weekend.